Hey guys, what's up? I'm Erin and welcome back to the channel. When it comes to investing, it feels like everyone wants the next hot tip. Like, what's the next stock that's gonna shoot to the stratosphere? Or what's happening with Bitcoin or other cryptocurrency? What's some really exciting move that I can make with my portfolio today that's gonna make a difference in the next week or month or even the next year? But honestly, I think some of the most impactful advice is really the advice that people don't wanna hear. Or it's the advice that they say, oh, same old, same old. I've heard this before. It doesn't really matter that much. It's the advice that doesn't seem to move the needle that much. But I really do think that the most practical advice is often the most overlooked or the most forgotten, but it is the advice that can have the biggest impact. Your life should be exciting, but your money and your finances should be boring. You can read the headline articles about the next hot stocks to buy, or you can engross yourself in the Forbes 500 list of the wealthiest people. Those kind of things are exciting and attention grabbing, but the reality is that that's not what it's like for 99% of us. I'm a firm believer that anyone can become a millionaire nowadays through discipline. I'm a firm believer of that because I've been able to do it. Nothing I have done in my financial life would shock anyone. Quite simply, I started investing very young, and I did that month in and month out and year in, year out for decades. Simple as that. I've never had a moment of a big windfall. I've worked a normal job with a normal wage that has grown steadily over the years, and I've lived below my means. And at some points in my career in the very beginning, way below my means, which gave me a very aggressive savings rate. But again, none of this is shocking or exciting. When I started investing, I actually chose individual stocks, but over the years, I transitioned primarily to index funds. Well, admittedly, I have had one stock that has done quite well, and that was Facebook. I actually bought this stock when it first came on the exchange back in 2012. And let me tell you, for the whole first year of that stock being on the stock exchange, it did not do well. It went down quite a bit, but I stuck with it, and over time, it has done very well. Talk to any everyday person who has reached their financial goals, the ones who achieve financial freedom, the ones who are able to have a successful, well-funded retirement. Talk to any of those millionaires next door. It's not exciting, it's discipline, repeated month in and month out, year in and year out. Your coffee habit won't determine your retirement. How many times have we seen articles saying you won't be able to retire because of your $5 coffee, or you won't be able to retire because of your avocado toast habit? And first of all, let me say that avocado toast is absolutely delicious and literally my breakfast every single morning. And the premise behind these arguments is that the little expenses add up, and they certainly do. We can look at the tables that show us what investing a simple $5 a day over the course of an entire working career can grow to, and it certainly is a sizable sum. But for most of us, addressing those smaller expenses isn't going to be the thing that makes or breaks us. You'd have far more of an impact if you address your larger expenses. Think your rent or your mortgage, your transportation, what car you drive, things like that. Buying a home that isn't at the tippy top of your budget would likely leave several $100s in your budget each month, if not a couple $1,000s, which if otherwise left invested would have a very big impact. Buying a car that is say $20,000 or $25,000 versus say $55,000 or $60,000 would have a bigger impact. I really like to keep my fixed expenses as low as possible to free up as much of my budget as possible. And this is not to say that those little expenses don't matter. They do, but they don't matter as much as the big expenses. Because if you can find a way to free up, say, $1,000 in your budget by addressing those big expenses, that'd be the equivalent of 200 $5 coffees. And who the heck is drinking 200 coffees a month? Create a budget, and yes, you can address those smaller expenses, those subscriptions, those lattes, those items like that. But more importantly, make sure to address your bigger expenses. Learn the power of one. Okay, bear with me for a moment, because this one might seem like it flies in the face of the previous one, but it is worth saying, learn the power of one. The average employee contributes 7.5% of their pay to their 401k. If you have a $50,000 income, and that is your contribution rate, excluding employer match, over the course of a 40-year investing career, you could build $1 million net worth. But what if you increase your contribution by 1%? You could end up with a portfolio that's almost 15% larger. Or what if you focused on increasing your investment contributions by 1% each year? When you start out working, you likely start with a lower starting salary. And maybe at that point, it's hard to save. So maybe you're only saving, say, 5% of your income. But what if each year you focused on increasing your savings rate by 1% until you hit a certain threshold, say maybe 15% of your income? Increasing at 1% increments is pretty darn painless. Increasing in a 10% increment might seem impossible. Or let's return to our previous graph. Let's say that you're investing over a 40-year career. What if you decide to delay retirement by 1 year? Continue adding to your investments, continuing to let your investments grow for just 1 additional year. Now in this example, our investor only adds a little bit over $4,000 to the principal in that year, but the portfolio actually returns almost $100,000. And this is how compound interest works. The portfolio has grown to a point where it's robust enough that the returns from interest alone are quite impressive. Now, of course, we do have to make the caveat statement here that we really have no idea what the market will do in any given year. But more often than not, the market is up rather than down. And giving your portfolio the opportunity to grow for even just a single year more could add a sizable sum to that portfolio. Or what if you chose to invest in passively managed index funds with really low expense ratios, as opposed to, say, actively managed funds with a higher expense ratio, and did that over the course of a 40-year investing career? What kind of difference could that grow to? Or what if you drove your car for 1 year more? You went 1 more year without a car payment. What kind of difference could that make? Objectively, none of these are really big decisions. They might move the needle, say 1%, but that 1% projected out over many years can make a big difference. We live in a culture that is very obsessed with how other people perceive us. What other people think of our job title, our car, the clothes we wear, the house we live in, the vacations we take. I once heard a quote that what others think of you is none of your business. And I love that quote because largely I think it's true. Largely what other people think of us doesn't really matter. And I don't want other people's opinions to ultimately direct my lifestyle or how I spend my dollars. Case in point, I live in a neighborhood that has freestanding homes on one side and townhomes on the other. I live in one of the townhomes, and I was speaking with one of my neighbors who lives in one of the townhomes as well, and she was saying that one of our other neighbors from the freestanding homes was saying that our part of the neighborhood was the poor part of the neighborhood, and she was saying that this was incredibly upsetting. To which I replied, I love my home. I actually think it's beautiful. I love that it fits within my budget. I love that when I go to pay my bills, I have no stress. I don't really care what someone else thinks of my home. So often we can feel the pressure to take a nicer vacation or buy nicer clothes or drive a nicer car, whatever it may be, simply to keep up with those around us. And often it's because of this lifestyle inflation that even as people's incomes tend to increase over the years, they continue to live paycheck to paycheck because they inflate their lifestyle. So what's most important is that you're building a life that you love, a life that is important to you. It doesn't matter how it looks to anyone else because truth be told, nobody really cares about what's going on in your life. You don't care enough about your whole self. And when I say your whole self, I mean yourself at all stages of life. It's a little bit selfish and short-sighted to say, I'm going to do and buy everything I want today. I'm not going to save for the future. And when I say it's selfish because it's robbing your future self of a better life. If you give in too much to this I want it now mentality, you're failing to consider the future you. And it's a really common trap for people in their 20s or 30s to fall into, to have the attitude of, I've got to enjoy this trip now. I've got to live for the moment now because I'm not going to be able to enjoy it later. But truth be told, 50 or 60-year-old you is still going to want enjoyment. But it can be really hard to conceptualize who we're going to be and the life we're going to want when we're 20 or 30 years down the road. And I think this is part of the big hang-up that people have when they're struggling to save for the future. When they're trying to think about who they're going to be in 10 or 20 years' time, they think, well, that's not my problem today. That's the problem of future me. You can think about this on a smaller scale. Think about procrastination of a work project that's due on, say, Friday. You could start working on that project on Monday and do a little bit each day, or you can wait until Thursday and have the stress of having to do it all at once. A lot of people don't take care of this project at the beginning of the week. They put it off until Thursday, and then Thursday you rolls around and ends up being resentful for being put in this situation. When you fail to consider your financial future, you're doing the exact same thing. You're procrastinating, but just on a grander scale. You're putting things off for 20 or 30 years. The best investment you can make in life is yourself. First, from the perspective of always making sure to grow your skill set, which makes it so you can grow your income, which makes it so it's easier to build wealth over time. But also, more importantly, from the perspective of taking care of yourself physically, taking care of your health. Without your health, it really doesn't matter how much money you have. And also consider that it's very expensive to be sick. Small investments like a healthy diet year in and year out, making sure to have an active lifestyle, making sure to get enough sleep. These things all add up and add up to a healthy body that you get to carry with you to 50 and 60 and beyond. Going into your later years in good health gives you more years of life enjoyment, gives you more opportunities for wonderful experiences. Money is nice, but health is more important. Investing advice doesn't have to make headlines in order to be effective. In fact, I would probably argue that most investing advice that is effective probably isn't going to make headlines. What's your favorite piece of advice that you've heard over the years? Leave your thoughts in a comment down below. I post new videos every single week. If you got anything at all out of this one, please give it a like. If you're new here, please consider subscribing, or if you know of someone who might get something out of this type of content, please consider sharing. I'll see you soon. Bye.